The streets of Seoul were alive with the restless hum of city life. Neon lights flickered against wet asphalt as evening drizzle gave the bustling avenues a sheen that mirrored the skyline. Taif, her long black braids swaying with every determined step, carried a small shopping bag from a local market in one hand and clutched her phone in the other. Her dark ebony skin glowed under the streetlights, a contrast to the pale Koreans bustling around her. Despite being far from home, she walked with a quiet confidence that spoke of years spent surviving, learning, and achieving, first as a gifted student in Lagos, then as a renowned international doctor. Tonight, she had one goal: finish the last of her house shopping before the week began. But Seoul, she had quickly learned, could be as unpredictable as it was beautiful. The screech of hurried footsteps behind her caught her attention. Before she could react, a hand lunged, yanking her purse from her grasp. "Thief!" she screamed, her voice slicing through the night. The man bolted into the crowd, nimble and fast. Her heart leapt, not with fear for herself, but for the small, precious items she had earned with her sweat and tears. Instinctively, Taif raised her heels, preparing to chase after him. But before she could take a step, a blur shot past her. At first, she thought it was the thief, but then she caught a glimpse of a figure, tall, imposing, and athletic, cutting through the crowd like a hawk. He was dressed in a fitted black jacket, jeans, and boots, his dark hair tousled yet commanding. The man had the presence of someone trained, honed, someone who could move mountains without a second thought. Her purse vanished into his hands as he sprinted past, his gaze locked on the thief who had underestimated him. Her breath caught. Could this be? Seconds later, the thief stumbled, losing his balance on the wet street, and the man caught up, deftly subduing him. The thief's cries were loud, almost comical against the seriousness of the figure standing over him. Taif blinked, her legs weak. Her purse was returned, the small leather bag pressed into her hands. "Are you okay?" the man asked, voice deep and measured, like a low thunder rolling over a quiet valley. I think so," Taif stammered, still catching her breath. "Thank you, you saved me." He nodded curtly, brushing off his hands, as if he had done nothing remarkable. Yet the way his eyes scanned the street, vigilant and sharp, spoke of years of discipline and danger. "You need to be careful. Streets like this aren't safe." Taif studied him. He was impossibly handsome in a way that made her chest tighten. His eyes were dark, almost black, with an intensity that could unsettle even the most stoic. Something about him suggested he wasn't just any passerby. "I should go," she said, adjusting her bag. But something in her chest ached to ask more, to understand the enigma standing before her. Before she could think, he turned on his heel, disappearing into the crowd, leaving her breathless in the neon-lit streets of Seoul. The next morning, Taif's routine at the hospital was punctuated by a strange sense of anticipation. Even as she scrubbed into the surgical suite, her mind replayed the incident on the streets, the blur of movement, the dark, penetrating gaze of the man who had saved her purse. Her colleague, Dr. Hyunjae, noticed her distraction. "Taif, are you daydreaming again?" he teased lightly, earning a small, embarrassed smile from her. "I just had an unusual encounter last night," she replied carefully, not wanting to sound dramatic. Hyunjae raised an eyebrow. Curiosity piqued, but didn't press. He knew better than to pry too much into Taif's private life. The African doctor had a guarded soul beneath her warm smile. Meanwhile, somewhere across Seoul, Sang-hun, a soldier of remarkable skill, sat in a modest apartment, nursing a minor ankle injury from his last undercover mission. He had just been transferred to Seoul and had been given 1 month of leave, a rare reprieve from the relentless chaos of his professional life. He was young, barely 28, yet the country had come to rely on him for its most dangerous missions: infiltrating mafia rings, stopping smugglers, rescuing kidnapped victims. His reputation was formidable, whispered about even in international circles. Tonight, though, he only wanted peace. He wanted quiet. And yet, fate seemed to have other plans. Days later, The universe orchestrated a collision neither of them had expected. Taif was walking to the hospital after a late grocery run when she collided with someone in the bustling metro entrance. The impact sent her phone skittering across the floor. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, bending to pick it up. Before she could finish, a familiar shadow fell over her. The man who had saved her purse weeks ago, his ankle now bandaged and carefully hidden beneath his boot, knelt beside her, offering a hand. "You again," she whispered, heart pounding. Sang-hun's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Seoul is a big city, but apparently not big enough to keep us apart." Over the following weeks, their lives became inexplicably intertwined. From street chases to hospital emergencies, each encounter drew them closer, the tension between them shifting from fleeting curiosity to something deeper, dangerously intimate. Sang-hun's life of secrecy and covert operations clashed with Taif's devotion to healing and saving lives. Yet, in each other's presence, the world seemed to pause. One night, after a long day of emergency surgeries, Taif found herself walking home through the same streets where they had first met. A shadow moved behind her, and her pulse quickened. Before she realized it was Sang-hun. "You should not be alone," he said, tone firm yet tinged with concern. "I can handle myself," she replied, though her hands trembled slightly. "Not against everything in the city," he countered, stepping closer. Their proximity ignited something in her chest, a fierce, unspoken longing. And then, before either could retreat, he leaned down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His lips hovered near hers, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed suspended. "Why are you doing this?" Taif whispered. "Because I can't stop," he murmured, finally closing the distance. Their lips met in a kiss that was at once urgent, possessive, and tender, a promise of danger and desire mingling together. From this night forward, their story became a dance of passion and peril. Sang-hun's covert missions brought him face-to-face with deadly mafias and smuggling rings, while Taif's work at the hospital demanded her compassion and patience. Their love was forbidden, fraught with obstacles, yet irresistible. Every glance, every touch, every whispered promise carried the weight of a world intent on keeping them apart. The night after their first kiss lingered like a secret on both their lips. Neither spoke of it, but both felt its echo in every glance, every accidental brush of hands that left their hearts racing. Taif sat in the hospital cafeteria, a paper cup of lukewarm coffee trembling slightly between her fingers. She told herself to forget him, the stranger who had risked everything to return a purse, the soldier whose eyes had looked at her like she was the only still thing in a moving world. But forgetting Sang-hun was like trying to hold back the tide with bare hands. Her colleague, Dr. Hyunjae, dropped into the seat beside her. "You've been distracted lately," he said with his usual teasing smile. "You stare into space like a patient on anesthetics." Taif chuckled softly. "I'm fine. Just thinking." "Thinking about someone?" His eyes twinkled mischievously. Her gaze shot up, startled. "What makes you think that?" "Because," he said, leaning back, "every time you smile like that, it's never about medicine." She rolled her eyes, hiding the faint blush warming her cheeks. "You're ridiculous." Hyunjae grinned. "Maybe, but I'm right." Before she could respond, her pager beeped. She glanced at it. Emergency Ward 3B. Another accident. Another rush of adrenaline. She rose quickly, coffee forgotten, and hurried down the corridor. The emergency room was chaos. Nurses shouting, monitors beeping, the smell of antiseptic and blood thick in the air. 32-year-old male, a nurse reported. Fractured ribs, deep lacerations, bullet graze on the shoulder. Found unconscious near the Han River. Taif froze. Her eyes darted to the stretcher, and her heart nearly stopped. It was him. Sang-hun lay on the gurney, shirt torn and bloodied, his face pale, yet calm, even in unconsciousness. His once steady hands, those hands that had caught a thief and touched her face so tenderly, were limp beside him. "Doctor, we need you," a nurse urged. Taif's instincts kicked in. She grabbed gloves and a mask, pushing down the surge of panic. Prepare 4 fluids. Get a trauma kit ready. We're stabilizing him now. For 2 hours, she worked relentlessly, suturing, cleaning wounds, checking vitals. Every move efficient but aching inside. She could not let emotion cloud her judgment, yet every heartbeat reminded her that this man was more than a patient. He was the stranger who had changed her life in a soul street. Finally, when his breathing steadied and his pulse returned to a normal rhythm, she exhaled shakily. "Dr. Taif," a nurse said softly, "you did great." She nodded, tearing off her gloves. "Keep monitoring him. Notify me if his condition changes." But as she turned to leave, his voice, hoarse and faint, stopped her. "Taif." She turned sharply. His eyes were half open, glazed but aware. "You saved me," he whispered. Her throat tightened. "You would have done the same." He tried to smile but winced. "I didn't want you to see me like this." "Why were you near the river at that hour?" she asked quietly. "It's dangerous." Sang-hun's gaze darkened, pain flickering beneath it. "Work," he muttered. "Something went wrong." Taif's brows furrowed. "You're a soldier, aren't you?" His silence was answer enough. Over the following days, she checked on him often. His injuries healed slowly, but his presence in the hospital became an unexpected constant. Every time she entered his room, she found him half smiling, teasing her gently, as though he could hide the shadows in his eyes behind charm. "You shouldn't smile so much," she scolded one afternoon while checking his blood pressure. "Why not?" "Because it makes me forget you're my patient," she said without thinking, and immediately regretted it. He grinned faintly, his voice a low murmur. "Then maybe I'll keep smiling." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the sterile hospital room felt like the only world that existed. But Seoul had a way of reminding people that peace never lasted long. 3 days later, 2 men in dark suits appeared at the nurse's desk, flashing government IDs. "Where is Sergeant Lee Sang-hun?" one asked curtly. The nurse hesitated, then pointed toward the ward. Taif was inside when they arrived. She turned sharply as they entered, their expressions stern and official. "We're here to escort Sergeant Lee for questioning," the taller man said. "It's a matter of national security." Sang-hun's jaw clenched. "I'm still recovering." "That's not optional." Taif stepped forward instinctively. "He's not ready to leave." "His condition." "This doesn't concern you, doctor." The man cut her off. But Sang-hun's gaze softened. "It does," he said quietly. "She saved my life." The tension was palpable. Finally, after a few minutes of terse discussion, they agreed to give him one more night. That night, Taif visited his room again. The city lights shimmered through the blinds, casting stripes of silver across his bed. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" she asked. Sang-hun hesitated. Then, after a long silence, he said, "There's a mole inside the military. Someone has been leaking mission data. My last operation was ambushed because of it." Her heart clenched. "So, that's why they want you back." He nodded. "They think I know something. Or that I am the leak." "That's ridiculous," she burst out. "You almost died." He smiled bitterly. "In my world, that doesn't mean much." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Then let me help. I'm not a soldier, but—" "No," his tone was sharp, protective. "Taif, you've already done enough. You don't belong in this mess." "But She stopped, unable to finish the sentence forming in her heart. He looked at her, eyes dark and pained. "You're the only peace I've found in years. And that's exactly why I have to stay away from you." The words sliced through her like glass. The next day, he was gone. His room was empty, his bed stripped, only a single folded note left behind on the table. "Thank you for saving me. Don't look for me. S." Taif sat on the edge of the bed, the note trembling in her hand. Her chest ached with a hollow grief she couldn't explain. She had known him for only weeks, yet it felt like losing a part of herself she hadn't known existed. Weeks passed. Life resumed its rhythm, but her heart didn't. She buried herself in work, in patience, in anything that could dull the echo of his voice. But then came the night that changed everything again. A gunshot victim arrived at the hospital, multiple wounds, critical condition. Taif was called in for emergency surgery. When she rushed into the operating room, her world tilted. It was Sang-hun. Gunfire exchange, the paramedic shouted. Unidentified assailants. We found him in a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Taif's pulse raced as she scrubbed in. Scalpel, she demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. Blood. So much blood. She worked feverishly, every second blurring into desperation. When the monitor finally stabilized, she sagged against the table, breathless. He was alive, but barely. That night, as he slept under heavy sedation, she sat by his bedside, unable to leave. Her fingers brushed his hand, trembling. You promised to stay away, she whispered. But the world won't let you go, will it? Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Sang-hun's lips moved faintly, his voice broken and soft. Taif, I can't lose you. Her heart clenched. Then stop fighting alone. The next morning, an explosion ripped through the hospital parking lot. Smoke filled the air. Sirens wailed. And as chaos erupted, Taif realized the people after Sang-hun had found him. Their love had just become a target. The blast threw the morning into chaos. Sirens screamed through the hospital courtyard as smoke clawed at the pale soul sky. Glass rained from the upper windows, shards glittering in the early light like cruel confetti. Doctors and nurses fled through the haze, covering their mouths, shouting names. Taif's ears rang. Her world narrowed to the single image of flames curling near the ambulance bay. Sang-hun. She turned and ran. Doctor, wait! Someone yelled behind her, but she was already pushing through the smoke, her white coat flapping like a flag of defiance. Her lungs burned. She ignored it. The ward entrance was half collapsed. She forced her way inside, stepping over debris. Down the corridor, through the smell of chemicals and scorched rubber, she found his room. The bed was empty. For a heartbeat her mind went blank. Then she noticed the overturned four-stand, the faint blood trail leading toward the stairwell. He had walked, dragged himself out. Hang on, she whispered, ripping off her gloves and sprinting after the trail. Halfway down, she heard voices, two men speaking hurried Korean. He's not dead. Orders were clear. Bring him alive. What about the doctor? If she saw too much, take her too. Taif's breath froze. She pressed her back to the wall, heart hammering. Her hand went instinctively to her pocket. Only a penlight. No weapon. No plan. Only fear. The men's footsteps grew closer. Just as they turned the corner, a shadow moved above them. A sharp metallic clang. One of the men crumpled, hit squarely with a broken pipe. The other turned, gun half raised, but Sang-hun was faster. He slammed the man against the wall, twisting the weapon free and landing a clean strike that dropped him cold. For a moment, silence. Smoke swirled around them like ghosts. Then his gaze lifted and found hers. Taif. His voice was hoarse, edged with both relief and pain. You shouldn't be here. You were supposed to be in bed, she shot back, eyes bright with tears. Do you have any idea? He swayed. Instinct took over. She rushed forward, catching him before he could fall. Blood seeped through his hospital gown. His stitches had split. You're bleeding again, she whispered. I've had worse, he muttered, wincing as she tightened her grip. We have to go. They'll send more. Go where? Somewhere they won't find us. They slipped through a maintenance exit and into the back alleys behind the hospital. Seoul's morning traffic roared a block away, oblivious to the chaos still unfolding. Taif half-supported him as they moved, his arm heavy across her shoulders. You're insane, she said between breaths. You just survived surgery. He gave a weak laugh. You said I heal fast. That was before you decided to play superhero again. I thought I was your patient, not your child. Then stop acting like one. They stopped, breathing hard. For a moment, despite the danger, he smiled, a rare, genuine curve of his lips that softened his sharp features. Still bossy, doctor. Still impossible, soldier. Their eyes met, and the tension between them thickened. Fear, anger, something else far deeper. But there was no time for it. A black van turned onto the street ahead. Sang-hun cursed softly. They're sweeping the area. This way, Taif said, pulling him toward the subway entrance. Down the stairs they ran, blending into the early commuters. She bought 2 tickets with shaking hands, leading him into the train just as the doors closed behind them. As the train lurched forward, Sang-hun slumped against the wall. His skin was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. You need a hospital, she whispered.
No.
They'll find me there. Then at least let me clean your wound. He hesitated, then nodded faintly. Taif's small apartment smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic. She helped him to the couch, ignoring the blood staining her blouse. When she lifted his shirt to check the wound, her breath caught, not just from the injury, but from the sight of his body, scarred yet strong, a roadmap of battles she couldn't imagine. You've been through hell, she murmured. It comes with the job. She cleaned the stitches carefully, her fingers trembling despite her medical precision. Every time she touched him, he inhaled sharply, not from pain alone.
Hold still, she said.
I'm trying, he replied, voice low. But you're making it difficult. Her eyes flicked up, startled. His were already on her, dark and unreadable. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then she forced herself to look away, wrapping the bandage a little too tightly. There, she said briskly. Try not to open it again. He caught her wrist gently. Thank you. The simple sincerity in his voice disarmed her. She nodded, suddenly unable to speak. Night fell. Rain tapped against the window, a soft rhythm that filled the silence between them. Taif sat across from him, arms folded. Who are these people? She asked finally. Private mercenaries, he said. Hired by someone who doesn't want the truth out. What truth? That the mole isn't just inside the military. It's higher. Political. He looked out the window. I was close to exposing it. And they tried to kill you. He nodded. And anyone near me. The words hung heavy between them. Taif felt a chill crawl up her spine. So that explosion was meant to finish the job. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain. Then she whispered, You saved me that first night. Let me save you now. He looked at her, eyes softening. You already have. Later, when the rain grew heavier, the electricity flickered and died. The apartment plunged into shadow, the only light coming from the street lamps outside. Taif lit a candle, the flame trembling as she set it on the table. Sang-hun watched her quietly. You're not afraid? Of what? Of me. Of what I bring. She met his gaze steadily. I'm a doctor. Fear doesn't save lives. He smiled faintly. Neither does recklessness. Then we'll call it courage. Something in her tone made his chest tighten. He stood slowly, crossing the small distance between them. The candlelight caught the line of his jaw, the faint scar near his temple. You shouldn't get involved, he said, voice barely above a whisper. It's too late. The air between them seemed to hum. Her breath hitched as he reached up, brushing a stray braid from her cheek. His fingers lingered, tracing her skin as though memorizing it. Taif, he murmured, if I kiss you again, I might not stop. She searched his face, every shadow, every truth hidden behind his eyes, and then, softly. Then don't. The kiss was different this time, slower, deeper, a collision of fear and longing and the realization that the world outside might never understand them. His hands framed her face, hers clutched the fabric of his shirt, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat against her palm. When they finally parted, the candle had burned nearly to the wick. Outside, thunder rolled across the city like a warning. Dawn crawled over Seoul like pale smoke. The rain had stopped, but the city still glistened. Every rooftop dripping, every street washed clean yet restless. Inside Taif's apartment, silence lingered after the night's storm. Sang-hun sat by the window, half-dressed in a fresh shirt she'd found for him, a handgun lying on the table beside an untouched bowl of rice. He had barely slept. Neither had she. When Taif stepped out of her room, her eyes met his. "Any news?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "The comms I used are burned. They'll come again." "Then we run," she said without hesitation. A faint, sorrowful smile tugged at his lips. "Running doesn't fix corruption, Doctor."
"Living does," she shot back.
"If they kill you, no one will ever know the truth." Her words hung between them. He reached for her hand. "If something happens today..." She cut him off. "Don't you dare." By mid-morning, Sang-hun's former commander, Colonel Park, contacted him through an encrypted message. "Safe house secured. Bring the doctor. I'll protect you both." Taif wanted to believe it. Sang-hun didn't. Still, he had no better choice. They left quietly, weaving through narrow alleys until they reached the outskirts of the city. The safe house was an abandoned military warehouse near the river. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Park waited, hands clasped behind his back. "You look terrible, Sergeant." "Good to see you too, sir," Sang-hun replied evenly. "We need to talk about the mole." "I know," Park said, eyes flicking toward Taif. "And I'm sorry it came to this." Something in his tone made Sang-hun freeze. A metallic click echoed. Two soldiers stepped from the shadows, rifles raised. Taif gasped. "What?" Park sighed. "You were never meant to survive that mission, Sang-hun. Orders from above. You dig too deep, you die quietly. That's how peace is maintained." "Peace built on lies," Sang-hun growled. Park's eyes hardened. "Peace built on necessity." The gunfire erupted before words could finish. Sang-hun shoved Taif behind a crate, rolling for cover as bullets shredded the air. He fired back, short, controlled bursts, every movement instinctive. The soldiers dropped one by one, but Park fled toward the rear exit. Sang-hun chased him through the rain-slick courtyard. "Stop," he shouted. Park turned, pistol drawn. "You could have been a hero." "I still am," Sang-hun said and fired. The shot echoed, sharp and final. Park fell, the pistol clattering from his grasp. For a long time, Sang-hun stood over him, chest heaving, the rain beginning again in soft, mournful sheets. When he returned inside, Taif was kneeling amid the smoke, tears streaking her face. "It's over," he said, though his voice shook. "Is it?" she whispered.
They couldn't stay.
Sirens wailed in the distance. Government cleanup teams were already on their way. Sang-hun guided her through back roads until they reached an old fisherman's dock on the river. A small boat waited, its engine sputtering like an old heart. "Where will we go?" Taif asked. "Nowhere they can find us," he said. "For now." She touched his cheek, fingers trembling. "You saved a country that doesn't even know your name." He covered her hand with his. "And you saved me." They climbed into the boat. The skyline of Seoul glimmered behind them, cold, beautiful, distant. The wind off the river was sharp, carrying the scent of iron and rain. "Will you come back?" she asked after a while. He hesitated. "If I stay gone, they'll say I betrayed them. If I return, they'll use me until there's nothing left. I don't know which is worse." Taif stared at him for a long moment. "Then come back for me." That broke something inside him. He reached for her, pulling her close, and kissed her fiercely, the kind of kiss that felt like a vow. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. "I will," he whispered. Spring returned to Seoul quietly. The hospital garden bloomed with white magnolias, their petals opening toward a soft blue sky. Taif walked the path in her white coat, stethoscope swinging at her side. The world had changed. The scandal of the military mole had exploded months earlier. Leaked documents, anonymous evidence, resignations. No one knew who had exposed it, but Taif did. She paused at the bench near the magnolia tree, where a small envelope rested against the wood.
No one else noticed it.
Her heart fluttered as she picked it up. Inside was a photograph, Sang-hun standing on a coastline, wind in his hair, eyes smiling even through the distance. On the back, a single line written in his neat, disciplined hand. Still keeping the promise. Taif pressed the photo to her chest, a tear sliding down her cheek. She looked up at the sky, whispering, "So am I." The wind carried the scent of the sea through the blooming branches, and somewhere beyond the horizon, a soldier finally allowed himself to breathe free. That evening, as the sun sank over Seoul, a figure in civilian clothes walked through the crowd outside the hospital. He paused briefly, eyes catching on the tall African woman laughing with a group of interns. For a moment, he almost stepped forward. Then he smiled instead, a quiet, private smile, and turned toward the river, disappearing into the golden light. Taif felt it then, a strange, familiar warmth brushing her heart. She looked toward the street, but there was only sunlight and the echo of a heartbeat that would always match her own.